I thought I knew how to do ghost stamping, but my results were not always the greatest. So I started testing, and what I found completely changed the result. And if this technique has not worked for you before, this might be why. Let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? My name is Tiffany Solorio. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can join the community. Now, if you've been around for a while, welcome back. I always love having you here too. Now, today we are on day 13 of 20 days of creative play, and we are doing some ghost stamping. Now, if you want to follow along, you can grab the free PDF with all 20 days of prompts down in the description box. Now, ghost stamping is basically stamping with water to lift color from your background instead of adding more color on top. Now, I'm not just going to be showing you the technique today, I'm going to be walking you through what finally made the ghost stamping work, and then we'll be taking that background all the way to a finished card. So stick with me. Now, I actually did this technique before, some of you probably remember, in a previous series, and a lot of people loved it. But if I'm being completely honest, my results just were very underwhelming. They worked, but they weren't as clear as I wanted them to be. And this time around, I knew I could troubleshoot it a little more and make the results even better. The first time I did this technique, I created a background with sprays. Now, it worked, but the image was really faint and I had to stamp multiple times just to see anything at all. So I thought, all right, maybe it's just that background. So this time I grabbed a few more backgrounds from my stash, some brighter ones and some more saturated ones, and I started testing, but I kept getting the same result. Very faint, very subtle, almost too subtle. And at this point I was like, all right, something is not quite right. I know this could be better. And then it clicked. Those backgrounds had already been worked with a lot of water, so there really wasn't much left to lift. And on top of that, they already had so much movement and texture from the sprays and water that the stamped image just wasn't standing out the way I wanted it to. So I decided to try something different, and this is the part that made the biggest difference. Instead of using a heavily worked background, I swiped fresh ink directly onto mixed media paper. You could also do ink blending if that's what you prefer. You can use sprays too, but the key is not adding a ton of water before you try the ghost stamping. You want that color to still have something to react with. For this part, I placed my stamp inside my MISTI so I can get even pressure and stamp in the exact same spot if I needed to. That really helps with this technique, especially if you're using a larger stamp or if you want to stamp more than once. Once my ink was dry, I lightly spritzed my stamp with water and then I pressed it onto the background, and the difference was night and day. You can actually see the image lifting. It's clearer, it has way more contrast, and it just works so much better. After I stamp with the water, I like to place a paper towel and gently lift up the excess water from that background. That helps reveal the ghosted image and keeps the water from sitting there too long. And here's a little bonus. Before cleaning off the stamp, I took another piece of mixed media paper and pressed it right on top of that stamp to pick up all of that color that was lifted from the background. So you kind of get a 2-for-1 here. You get the ghosted image on your original background, and then you also get the second print using all of that beautiful color that would have just been wiped away. I love that because you're not wasting any of that ink and you end up with another background you can use later. Now, if you've ever tried this technique and it didn't work the way you expected, it might not be the technique. It might be the surface you're working on. It might be that your background has already been worked with too much water. It might be the paper, or it might just be that you need a little more water on the stamp and more even pressure. Now, for this technique, paper really does matter. If you're using something really thin, the ink can just soak in pretty quickly, and that can make it harder to lift. But with mixed media paper, the ink tends to sit on top a little more, which gives you more time and more ability to pull that color back up. You also want enough water on your stamp to reactivate the ink. Not so much that it puddles everywhere and blurs the image, and pressure matters too. You don't have to press crazy hard, but you do want the water to make contact with that background. That is another reason the MISTI is so helpful here. It gives me a little more control, and if I need to stamp again, I can go right back into the same spot. You can try this with different types of stamps too. Rubber stamps, clear stamps, more solid images, more detailed images. They may all give you a slightly different result. So this is definitely one of those techniques where it helps to test and see what works best with what you have. Now you're not going to want to go anywhere because this is where we take that ghost stamped background and actually turn it into a finished card. I love how this one turned out, and it was super simple to create. I grabbed some die cuts from my stash and picked one that I liked. Since this die cut already had a little bit of gold on it, I decided to bring some of that gold onto the background too. For that, I put a little bit onto my glass mat. I added a tiny bit of isopropyl alcohol and used a paintbrush to splatter it on. Now with foundry wax, you do want to heat set it so it stays on the panel and doesn't flake off later. And of course, I had to add a few white splatters with my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White because you know I cannot skip those white splatters. Then I trimmed the panel down to 3 3/4 by 5 inches so I would have a nice border around it. I roughed up the edges just a little bit to add a little more mixed media feel. I layered it onto a dry embossed white background to add a little more interest, especially since my focal point is white and the background is so colorful, and finished everything off with a simple sentiment sticker from Tim Holtz. I thought Make-A-Wish was perfect for this card, so that's what I went with. And that is the finished card. So again, this is really about taking what you already have and pushing it one step further. And if ghost stamping has not worked for you before, don't automatically assume you did something wrong. Look at your paper, look at how much water was already used on that background. Make sure that background is dry. Try a little more or less water on your stamp and make sure you're getting even pressure. Sometimes it's just a little troubleshooting that makes all the difference. I would love to know, have you tried ghost stamping before and did it work the way you expected? If you have any other tips, be sure to share them in the comments. That is how we help each other out, inspire each other, and build this creative community together. I hope this helps you not only try something fun, but also troubleshoot when things don't go as planned. Thank you all so much for being here, and as always, don't forget to stay creative, my friends.